All right, this is Andy McNeil, and this is another edition of Free Arkansas, and I'm excited today to be here with Hallie Shoffner, who is a U.S. Senate candidate for the Democratic Party here in the state of Arkansas. Hallie, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to talking to you and learning a lot more about you. I wanted to start with your farm. I've listened to a lot of your social media, which, by the way, is really interesting. I really think you guys are doing a good job with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
The other day, I talked to John Connor. I don't know if you know John. He's from the Newport area.
I know John well. Yeah.
And he was telling me the story about, like his favorite thing is to drive down his old farm, on a Saturday and Sunday. And so I'm just curious, like, can you tell me what your farm means to you?
Oh, gosh. What an interesting question. I don't know that I've ever gotten that before. I told my husband recently, right before I launched my campaign, we went on a little mini vacation down to Lake Ouachita. And we went out on this little pontoon boat. We drove around, and I have to say I was kind of bored.
Yeah.
And my husband was like, "Why are you bored? Like, all you do on the farm is drive around and look." But the thing about my farm is that because I farm it, because I'm so intimately involved in its cultivation, I can see its low spots and its high spots. I can see its weaknesses and its strengths, and it feels like a relationship that I don't have with anywhere else. It's a relationship that's very rooted, not just in the land itself, but in the legacy as well. Knowing the stories and knowing where the houses were of my ancestors. And I can't think of anything better than getting on a side-by-side and just driving around the farm. And of course, farmers, we drive around other people's farms and like, oh, look, what's he doing over there?
Yeah.
That's a little bit of what we do. But yeah.
Well, I know that my wife's family are all rice farmers down in Stuttgart. And so for years, I've had a picture of the farm. It's really like it wasn't taken by a drone because it was so long ago, but it was taken by a plane going over, like a crop dusting plane. And so, and there's something about that that's just, like it just feels like family and home.
It does. Yeah. It's weird campaigning because, when you're farming, you're very rooted in one place. Campaigning, I'm all over the place, and I get to experience all sorts of new kinds of farming, but also, different kinds of industries. I got to tour a tire plant down in Texarkana, another one in Russellville, and I'm really enjoying that life as well. But I have to say, I wake up every morning and I check my weather app and I think, what's going on the farm?
Yeah.
It's kind of habit.
Well, I was curious on this, and I want to talk about your background, but I wanted to get to that inflection point because I think that, and I've heard if I can't farm, I'm going to fight, right? I know that at least for my own relatives down in Stuttgart, this has been a very, very difficult year. Second mortgages on farms.
That's rough.
Pretty much everybody's going to lose money. It doesn't really matter if you're planting cotton, rice, soybeans, corn. You're going to lose money on a per acre basis. Was that one of the inflection points for you?
It was. Yeah. In fact, I remember the moment that I knew it was over. It was in February, and we were planning out the crop for the year. And I had, like 6 different spreadsheets pulled up with a scenario on each one. And it was, what are my fields? What can I produce on them? How much can I expect to get for the crop based on, what I think the market might do? And how much is it going to cost me to produce that product? And I didn't have a single scenario that worked out. I had one scenario, one that broke even. But the thing about farming is you are one weather event away from a loss.
Right. And this year was a little wet, right? Especially in May.
I mean, it rained. Oh my God, it rained the same amount in like a week that it did in 3 months. And you just couldn't get to the field. Tons of things were late. And so I called my mom. Of course, my parents are retired. They retired a while back. But I called her and I said, I can't guarantee that if we do this again, that if I go get the loan and I leverage everything you own, your house, your 401k, the small amount of land you do own, I can't guarantee we might not lose it all.
Yeah.
We'll be in a hole so deep we can't get out of. And I said, as much as I love this, I don't think that's the responsible thing to do. And so we decided to sell out.
Very difficult choices for sure.
Yeah, I think it was probably one of the worst moments of my life, because it felt like I was trying to farm with my hands tied behind my back.
Let me back up and then we'll come back to this moment. So you grew up, I don't know, I know that you grew up in Jackson County. I don't know if you're from Newport or one of the other surrounding towns. Is it from Newport?
Technically from Shoffner, which is my family's last name. So my family set up shop, 150 years ago, just south of Newport. And, there were enough of us and we farmed enough that, we built a post office and a mercantile. We had a cotton gin. All of that's gone now, of course. I think there are like 10 of us and we're all related in this little town. But that's where I grew up. Both my parents farmed. My mom is actually an agricultural researcher. She was one of the first women ever to do agricultural research in soybeans. And
excellent.
Yeah. And so they came home when I was a baby, started farming again. And I grew up, mostly I grew up, riding shotgun with my dad. And I think I worked nearly every day of every summer on the farm since about the age of 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you decided to go to college, you ended up going to Vanderbilt. Tell me about that.
Well, I actually got a scholarship because of where I was from. The guy that set up the scholarship was from Jackson County, and he wanted to make sure that a kid from rural Arkansas got first dibs on this scholarship. So because of where I was from, and I did really well in school. I worked really hard in school. I was valedictorian of Newport High School, and I got this scholarship to go to a great school that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to afford. And I got a great education.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we have something in common there, and that my daughter, same boat as you, also went to Vanderbilt. And so excellent university. So you come back, and do you go to the Clinton School after that? Is that correct?
I did. I graduated in 2009, and that was, of course, when we had the recession and there weren't a whole lot of jobs out there. So I decided my dad actually told me about the Clinton School of Public Service and this group of students who were involved in a project in Newport. And I loved the idea. I've always felt, I think, called to be an advocate. My parents taught me that the way you get ahead in life is you work hard and you serve your community.
Yeah.
And I think I really took that to heart. Even in college, I gave up spring breaks to do service projects. I lived for a summer in India, teaching English to at-risk girls. When I came back to Arkansas and I went to the Clinton School, I felt like it was a really great opportunity for me to learn how to become an effective advocate, not just someone who talks about doing things, but someone who really understands the way that you enact change. When I came back to the farm, I think I brought that with me. I became an advocate for regenerative farming practices, environmental conservation, trying to encourage financial sustainability in sort of your smaller farms. We were 2,000 acres and we were mostly tenant farmers. So that was really important to me to make sure that smaller farmers could also make a good go of it.
Interesting. Well, I didn't know that you went to India. I did read that you spent some time down in South America.
I did. That was in the Clinton School.
And what did you do down there?
I worked in women's rights in both Lima and the Amazon jungle. I worked for a group that did health education through a radio program in Iquitos, Peru, which is in the Amazon rainforest. These are communities that you can only get to by boat. And they did a radio program that was kind of like a soap opera. And it taught women, how to care for themselves, how to advocate for themselves, and their communities as well. It was a great program. I absolutely loved it.
What what was your biggest takeaways from something like that?
I think I got to go into these communities and learn about agriculture in the Amazon rainforest and the economic development that food production provided to these women, particularly in these communities. and the way that they could transport goods to the markets in Iquitos, the way that their food production worked, and how important culturally that was to them.
So you do these things. Do you think at that time you're going to go back home and do farming, or do you think, okay, I'm going to go do other things? Because you probably had lots of choices.
My parents really encouraged me to do something else. They didn't really ask me to come home until much later. So I did a lot of things. I worked in marketing, web design. I did some projects with the Arkansas Department of Health, and honestly, I didn't really love any of it. And so when my mom called me, my dad has dementia. He was starting to show signs. My mom couldn't run the farm by herself, so she called me and she said, "Look, I'd like you to come back. Obviously, you don't have to, but if you don't, we'll go ahead and liquidate and go out of business." And I didn't want that. So I went home
So you
and
went home.
took over the farm. Yeah.
And when did you do that?
2016. So 9 years ago.
2016.
Mhm.
So when you got there and you started working in your community, were you involved in politics while you were there, or were you just very focused on some of the advocacy, whether related to sustainability and regenerative farming and such?
It was more in the business community. I think I did a lot of advocacy and economic development, particularly for farmers being able to diversify. I think one of the things I identified pretty early on in the process was that we were pigeonholed into certain commodity crops. That's just the government providing these programs for the production of things like soybeans and corn and rice and wheat and grain sorghum. While those were great programs and we made money, it didn't really allow us to diversify into things like specialty grains or peas or specialty beans or even things like watermelon or sweet potatoes, which are both things we can grow very successfully here. So I started a project with the World Wildlife Fund back in 2019. We call it the Delta Ag Alliance. And the whole purpose is if a farmer wants to grow something else, how would they do it? Where would
Right.
the funding be? What would the programs on the policy, on the federal policy level be? How would the farm bill change? And then I also worked in environmental conservation. I sat on a panel at the Rotary 99 in Little Rock. This would have been 2 years ago with Senator Bozeman and Secretary of Agriculture Wes Ward. And we
Okay.
talked about the farm bill, and we talked about environmental conservation programs and how those could be incentivized. I think I really, when I think about the role that I had as a farmer and an advocate for economic development, and I think of my role as a senator, it would be my job as a senator to knock down the door of every company and every country that wants to buy an Arkansas made or an Arkansas grown product.
Right.
And then to knock down the door of the USDA and the FDA and say, "You got a research project? We got the best land grant universities in the country."
Yeah. Well, to go back just for something you said, just so what you mean if I decide I want to go into blueberries? I just actually happen to have a blueberry farmer who's one of my good buddies. You're just on your own versus any sort of government program? Is that the way to think about it? Like it doesn't support that. You just
Yeah.
have to roll the dice with what you're in.
You do, because there are very few safety nets for specialty crop production, the production of actual food, so like blueberries or watermelons or sweet potatoes. You can get some private insurance programs. They tend to be a little more expensive than the ones that are subsidized by the Farm Bill. There's a lot of risk involved, and so it's not a risk that farmers want to take. Also, there's really not a market for it. If you want to sell a product to a group outside of Arkansas, like a watermelon or a pumpkin, you got to go find that market. And then it becomes very niche. It's very difficult to scale. The processing really isn't in the Delta for things like watermelons or sweet potatoes. I mean, there's very little. And so as a farmer who's growing something and doesn't have a whole lot of time to build a new business or to market themselves, that becomes very difficult.
Yeah. Well, you're nestled in between, large ag companies on one side that are selling, seeds, fertilizer, or even
Right.
the distribution, whether it's, ADM or Cargill on the other side, of that. And then all of your inputs are also extraordinarily expensive and also large companies. So I can see where you don't have a lot of choice. You're kind of forced down into these particular crops,
Right. But that being said, companies want to come into Arkansas and have, they're mitigating their risk too. They want to produce in multiple places in case there's an environmental issue in one place or a disease issue. And they're interested in coming to Arkansas. The issue is it's risky to get into a specialty crop. There isn't a whole lot of processing or aggregation or distribution.
Right.
And we actually had buyers come in to the Delta as part of this Delta Ag Alliance program. And they came to my farm where I demonstrated specialty rice production. We had about 20 different varieties in the field, and we talked about market development for those varieties, but it's very limited. The other thing we're missing is research. We got to have research to better understand what varietals work, and if they don't work, to develop new ones specifically for the Delta. The thing is, and I love this statement, Arkansas could be the specialty crop capital of the United States. We could feed the entire United States. And the reason is we have the best farmers in the country. We have the best ground. We have water. And what we also have is the best logistics companies in the world. Yeah. Walmart, J.B. Hunt, Jones, Benny Keith. I mean, this is something we could do. We have an incredible opportunity here. But what we also have is legislators like Tom Cotton who are standing in the way of progress because they just don't have any vision for the opportunity that we have here.
We certainly have opportunity. I mean, when you look at, I'm going to come back to this, but I'll just say, because you brought it up. I mean, I look at it and I say our GDP is 150 billion in the state of Arkansas. I think farming is, depending on what you count in farming, somewhere between 14 billion and, 25 billion. But like you say, there's a confluence of things that have made it very difficult in the Delta. Which I'm going to get to those things because I'm interested in your thoughts on various things that impacted. But before I get there, so tell me the moment you decided to run.
So when we closed, that was in February. We wrapped things up. We had our auction in March. Everything was brought out and washed and put on an auctioneer's website and sold off to the highest bidder. So in March, I kind of started talking about the closure of the farm and the farm crisis online. I wanted people to understand what was happening to farmers and why it was so risky for the economic development in Arkansas and also the rural communities that farms are in. And I was invited to speak at a town hall in Little Rock, a church downtown. I think 700 to 800 people showed up. And as I stood on the stage speaking, strangers were hauling away the very last pieces of a 150-year-old operation.
Yeah.
That was very difficult for us. And instead of coming to that town hall as they were invited, our elected officials were just a few miles away. They were in Little Rock at a re-election fundraiser for Tom Cotton at $7,000 a plate. And the truth is, I said that I was trying to farm with two hands tied behind my back. That isn't just farmers. That's a lot of people here in Arkansas. Whether you're an electrician who has to have ACA insurance that's no longer going to be subsidized, or you're a single mom with 3 kids and you need your SNAP benefits, or you're just working 2 jobs and you can't stretch your paychecks beyond their limits. That isn't just farmers, that's everybody. And I'm angry. I am indignant on behalf of those people. And so I decided, you know what, if I can't farm, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for farmers and workers and families and for hungry children right here in this state.
So when did you say it out loud to yourself? Was it then when you said, okay, I'm in this night?
No, yeah. It was then. I walked up to somebody afterwards and I said, how do I run for office? And we figured it out.
And now you're in.
And now I'm in.
Yes. Well, something to like what you just said. I heard a statistic the other day, and I haven't actually looked at any of the details, so I'm just going to assume it's directionally correct. But one of the things that they were basically saying was that last year there was more Americans that took European vacations, but also, there was more people that were in food assistance programs, needing meals. And I know even here in Russellville, there's various local churches involved with feeding the hungry. And I talked to one of the pastors the other day, and he actually said it was the last couple, month has been some of the highest numbers they've ever seen. It's so, and that's this really dichotomy, that we're facing. It's is that what you see and hear when you're out talking to people?
Yeah, absolutely. The truth is because we have avoided the problem of chronic hunger and not being able to afford our health insurance, prices going up, because we have not talked about those things and not made any kind of progress toward real solutions. We are squeezing the middle class. And we are extracting wealth in this country. We're extracting it from one class to another. Tom Cotton's only economic policy is to give tax cuts and loopholes to billionaires and land barons at the expense of everybody else. And that makes no economic sense. The reason that I think the One Big Beautiful Bill is so awful is because it's bad business. If you cut your operating budget, the things that people need, and then at the same time, you cut your revenue by giving tax cuts to billionaires and land barons, and then you add trillions of dollars to the federal deficit, any business person will tell you that is a recipe for disaster.
Well, we certainly have a heck of a lot of debt, right? I mean, when I'm curious, I've got a list of things that I want to ask around like issues that I see, but before I do that, I'm just curious. I know you're talking to all sorts of people. What do you hear is like the top issues that people mention to you?
The fact that inflation is up and wages are not keeping up. Jobs, lack of economic development, just simply not supporting small businesses, overtaxing the middle class. The fact that we can't afford our healthcare anymore. I mean, forget the cost of healthcare. We can't afford our health insurance premiums.
Right.
And then, of course, education. I mean, we are defunding our public schools here in Arkansas. And I truly believe that the solution to every ill in our society is a young person with a belly full of healthy food and a good education.
Having the nutrients is certainly important. There's no question about that.
A sick, hungry kid can't learn. A sick, hungry worker isn't productive.
Even here locally, so even in Dardanelle, Arkansas, which is where right across the river from here, there is a substantial number of, it's well above 50% that are on the food assistance program. And I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but basically it's, you're on the breakfast program. Yeah. So there's definitely people, and I never really know, it's hard to really know for me whether that is how many people are really, are that many people really hurting? It's still it's still a very interesting statistic for sure.
That makes sense, right? I mean, if wages are up 40% if inflation is up 40% and wages are only up 22%, that makes sense. Yeah. If you can't afford food, you can't afford food. And these aren't people that aren't working. I mean, I think it's 45% of households in Arkansas are considered the working poor. That should not be a thing. There should be no such thing as the working poor. Hard work should mean a good life here in Arkansas.
Sure. When I look at the state, one of the things that I think, and here's what I want to do. I want to get some of the things I think about the state, and we can kind of talk about it or like hear your perspective from like how you think from like a state perspective, from a national perspective, but and just maybe what we can really do about it. But I'll start with healthcare, just at a very high level, because Arkansas doesn't rate very high on healthcare. So one of the things that I like to say here is that if you take a list of 50 states, unfortunately for Arkansas, we have this wonderful place, like you pointed out, with all these opportunities, but we do have, relative to other folks, we underperform in a lot of areas, and healthcare is definitely one of them. Okay. And so in the state here, we've got the vast majority of counties have a scarcity of primary care physicians. There's a lack of of specialty doctors. So it's probably true in Newport. There's probably doctors that come out once a week to Newport because there isn't one of those anywhere close by. Or maybe it's you go to Jonesboro. I'm not sure which direction you go. But, we've got an obesity problem, in the state. We've got, a large portion of our population here is on Medicaid, and so what do you think some of the solutions are, and how do you see the problem? And I don't even mention, the Affordable, Healthcare Act premiums going up.
Yeah, I truly believe that we have to get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is economic development. When I was a kid, there were plenty of specialty doctors in Newport. I mean, I remember Newport as a thriving town, and they're doing a lot of great work there right now and trying to boost economic development. But the truth is we have prioritized over time the success of corporations and rich folks and politicians over real people. We've allowed rural communities to lose these small businesses that were central not only to the revenues generated in these communities and the jobs in these communities, but also the culture. I mean, there used to be a real sense of strong community and prosperity in rural places in Arkansas, and we've lost a lot of that.
Yeah.
And the one reason that I talk so much about farming and food production. So what you mentioned about us, being one of the most unhealthy states in the country, if you take a map of agriculture and you color code it by the crops that you grow, Arkansas is dark green because mostly what we grow is soybeans. You got a little bit of rice, a little bit of cotton, but it's mostly soybeans. People don't eat soybeans. Animals eat soybeans. And it's not even our animals. It's Chinese animals. Well, not anymore. That's a totally different issue, but not anymore.
Yeah, tariffs killed that.
Right. So we don't produce food. If you overlay that map with a map of metabolic illnesses and diseases, particularly obesity, we're dark red.
Yeah.
If you overlay that map with the lack of economic development, we're dark red for very little economic development. And if you think about the support that farming provides to these small communities, if a farmer goes out of business, not just a farmer, it's their workers' wives, the kids in the public school system. It's the clinics that those workers would have gone to. It's the mechanics that work on our equipment and our trucks. It's the local truck dealerships that sell trucks to our workers and our farmers. It's the banks in rural communities that depend on agricultural lending. If a farmer walks in and throws his truck keys on the counter, what's the bank going to do with the truck?
Right.
And that hurts urban areas of Arkansas, because then you have the larger banks getting weaker because these smaller banks are going out of business. When a farm closes, it is not a trickle-down effect. It is like flushing a toilet. Right. So what if we revolutionized agriculture? What if we grew food that needed specialized processing, factories and plants we could build in rural communities that would provide revenue and jobs, that would attract more doctors into these communities, that we could invest in the public school system because we'd have more kids coming in. I mean, I truly believe that if we prioritize the success of small communities, of urban areas of the state that are lacking in economic development, that we can bring prosperity from the ground up. We're not doing that because we have leaders that don't believe in that. And I believe in that.
That's an interesting prospect because we have to figure out something. I mean, here in our state, about 70% of the counties lost population in the last decade. Now we grew, but if you took out just pure immigration and you took out Northwest Arkansas, I don't think that would be the case. So you've seen plenty of places that are going the wrong direction and need something. And I don't disagree with you that we're in an arms race for jobs. And we got to figure out how to create those jobs, right? We have to innovate to create those jobs for sure.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about workforce development yet. I mean, that's another critical piece that we don't focus on enough.
What would you do there?
Strengthen unions.
Yeah.
I'm very pro-union. I just got the endorsement of the AFL-CIO. very proud of that. One of the things that we did when we weakened the unions here in Arkansas is we took away a lot of workforce development that was very community based. They call themselves a brotherhood for a reason. Right. It is a community that they create, and they bring young people in. They train them for these jobs for free. And then they make sure that the workers are doing well in the plants that they work in. And I truly believe that our leaders have this mentality of scarcity, where if I get something, that means that someone else isn't getting something, or if someone else gets something, that means I'm not getting anything. But the truth is that our economy works in mutuality. If a worker does well, the company does well because that worker is more productive. If a company does well, the worker should do well. There's plenty of money in the United States for that to be true. We have ceded the union's workforce development to VOTEC schools. I'm not saying VOTEC schools aren't great. They are, but that means that the taxpayer is paying for that advocacy, that workforce development. That also means that kids who don't learn in a traditional setting are not going to be as effective or well trained. That also means that they're going to have to pay more for that. I mean, the unions did all that work for free. So we have to start thinking more about workers' rights and how that relates to workforce development.
I'm curious, do you see sort of an intersection with that and just education? Because I'm sure you have people, that you're friends with that went to school, took on a ton of debt, and it didn't, in some cases, didn't generate the prosperity that they thought. Do you have a perspective on how you would intersect that with education?
Yeah, honestly, I think teachers are a pretty good example of that. And I understand that, the state recently raised the base teacher salary to $50,000. What they really didn't understand is that if you do that, then you also have to increase the way that you grow over time. So now you have these teachers who have been teaching for 30 years making $58,000, and these brand new teachers making $50,000, and that really doesn't work. Teachers are the kind of the same situation. They can't collective bargain in this state. So they come out of school with massive amounts of debt. And the reason they went to school to become a teacher is because they truly love kids and they want our kids to do well. And then they go into an environment where they can't advocate for themselves because we have basically, we've pushed the AEA, the Association of Educators, to the back burner and not allowed them to do collective bargaining for teachers. And so you have a group of teachers with no power, no way to control their own future. And that's really what's happening, is the government is taking away our ability to determine our own fate. And isn't that the reason that we created the United States in the first place? That anyone can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. But if we let our politicians step on us, like Tom Cotton has stepped on us on his way to DC, if we let them continue to do that, then things are just going to get worse. We have to stand up and say enough is enough.
So, I'm going to come to Tom here in a second. I'm curious, when you go around, people bring up national issues. What are the national issues you hear about?
I hear about, obviously the shutdown was a huge issue. I think that's mostly what I've been hearing is the effects of the shutdown. I think people are really less interested in national issues than they have been. If you look at the numbers, most people care about what happens to their pocketbook, jobs, and the economy, and healthcare. They're not as concerned about immigration. They're not as concerned about these social issues that people fight about. And the truth is that, people are really tired of this rhetoric of left and right and liberal and conservative. And they're real people with real problems. And they want somebody who believes that the purpose of government is to create opportunities and then get out of the way.
Yeah. So are you the kind that if you were up there representing the state, do you perceive yourself as, I work collaboratively with people, or no, I've got this, I'm staunchly this one way. And if I don't have it my way, I'm not going to vote that, I'm not going to work with other people.
I believe in having convictions, for sure, but I don't believe in stalemates. Honestly, I think we should just wipe the slate, honestly, I believe we should wipe the slate clean. Our politicians, they get up to DC and they stay too long and they forget what life is like on the ground. I mean, I'm an Arkansas worker. I know what it means to have dirt under my fingernails, and I know what life is like on the ground.
Yeah.
That makes me a better politician, and that makes me a better public servant, which is really what our politicians should be. One of the things I like to talk about is I think that John Bozeman truly cares about farmers. I think he wants to get something done for farmers, but I don't think he has any help. I mean, you have two senators in this state. We got one that doesn't care, and we got one that does. And I would be more than happy to work with anyone across the aisle if they share a vision that is a prosperous and healthy Arkansas.
Yeah. I like to think that most of them do, but certainly there's those up there that are really just only interested in promoting their brand, whatever that is. And I won't go down that little rabbit hole.
They want to go on TV as much as possible and, foment fear. I mean, that's really what Tom Cotton does. He goes on TV or he comes back to the state and he wants everybody to be afraid of the future. I'm not afraid of the future. I think the future is quite bright if he'll get his dress loafer off our necks.
So, okay. So let's say you're up there. I know the last time we voted on a farm bill was 2018. Yeah. And I believe that's an every 5-year bill, even though we're past the 5-year mark. Tell us what would you do different about the farm bill, or tell me how you think it should be structured, or if anything different about how it is.
Well, so the way that we talk about the farm bill is, it's called the farm bill. So most people think it's about farmers. It's not. It's about feeding people. That's why it was created. It was created to make sure that farmers could produce food and that hungry people could eat. If you stabilize the farm economy so that they produce food, then people can buy that food and not be hungry. But we've gotten away from that. We've considerably started to incentivize the production of things that are not food. And when we do that, we build an economy that is based on quantity over quality. And that's why we grow so many soybeans and corn, which is animal food. So I think, number one, we have to de-risk the production of actual food. We have to make more investment in processing, specialized processing. We do some of that with the Specialty Crop Block Grant, but it's like $85 million a year across all 50 states. I mean, what are you going to do with $85 million a year? Right. We did some calculations through this Delta Ag Alliance program, and we calculated that converting just 3% of the acres in the Delta, just 3, would produce an additional $1 billion in crop receipts just to farmers.
Really?
Just to farmers. Yes. That does not include the economic development that you would create building, processing facilities in these small communities. The tax revenue that you would provide and the jobs that you would create. That doesn't count for, the additional money that would go to logistics businesses to truck things around. That's just to farmers, $1 billion. Do you know what it would take to get that? $1 billion. You invest $1 billion in specialized processing and helping farmers grow something else, and you get $1 billion a year just to farmers. That's not, not everything else. Well, that makes sense because we just spent $40 billion sending to, bail out Argentina. Surely we can spare $1 billion for the entire Delta region of Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee. Plus, you can go to other places in Arkansas that aren't the Delta that could very easily produce lots of different kinds of food. It's all about strategic investment. Our government hasn't the slightest idea how to spend their money. Because clearly, if we're sending money over to a different country to prop up their farmers, we're not doing it right.
So if you could do that, so let me see if I can recast that. So, so today I think that, that like you said, I think a good chunk of the farm bill is the SNAP program. But then the other piece of it is really the safety nets, but they're really around, like you said, soybeans, corn, things like that. And what your point is that, hey, look, it just perpetuates this ag business where we're just basically feeding animals, not feeding people. And we could basically use a small piece of, a portion of the ground and completely change it around and build new industries.
Yeah. I mean, it would revolutionize agriculture in Arkansas. It really would. And I know that, Tom Cotton, he complains all the time about the SNAP program because he feels like Arkansans are not worthy of food and medical care. If you don't want to spend $8 billion a month on food assistance, then solve hunger.
Yeah.
and do it with economic development. Really not that. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not hard, but we can do the work. I believe in doing the work.
I'm curious what you think about this. I think one of the biggest issues that we have in the future is privacy. And it's not, sometimes I look at, when you can, the the intersection of all the tracking, cameras, video with AI tools. And I look no further than Iran in terms of what they did with the women that took their headscarves off. Um, how do you feel about that? And would you be the kind that would want to perpetuate the Patriot Act where they're still collecting people's personal information?
I said this is another issue that completely baffles me in terms of the priorities of our legislators. Is Tom Cotton? He freaking wrote a book about the dangers of China. He is on the National Security Committee, but he has absolutely no interest in tackling the fact that most of the misinformation that comes into the United States is bots and troll farms from Russia, North Korea, China. I mean, he doesn't want to talk about any of that. And what's happening, truly what I believe, is one of the biggest national security threats we have, besides the fact that we don't produce food security is national security, is the fact that we do not tackle misinformation.
Yeah.
We let social media companies do anything they want. I think a really good example of that is the fact that there are so many bots online from foreign actors, and the fact that we're serving violent and disturbing content to children on social media because that is what the algorithm prioritizes. We're letting these companies get away with it's ridiculous.
An algorithm is one of the things that everybody understands. I mean, you say something in the phone, you say something, and then all of a sudden your social media feed just totally changes. The filibuster is a big issue here recently. Would you want to keep the filibuster or get rid of the filibuster?
No, I would like to keep it. I mean, the filibuster incentivizes people to cross the aisle and make deals. And that's what we need in this country. We need legislators who want to work with each other. I mean, right now we have a stalemate and a gridlock, and everybody's mad at everybody else, and that nobody benefits from that.
How do you think about the debt? I mean, we've got $35-ish trillion of debt, which is effectively like 1 year GDP. We're spending $7 trillion a year, right? Well, I don't know if we're getting that in tax revenue, but we're spending $7 trillion a year.
Yeah.
That's another one where I look at it and go like, boy, that just doesn't feel like that looks like, to me, that's an existential problem.
It is. And Lord help me, I could solve that. Stop giving tax breaks and loopholes to billionaires and land barons.
Yeah.
Let's generate more revenue.
We need some more revenue for sure. Okay. So tell me about how the campaign's going.
It's going great. I have been, I've never run for office before. And so I am honored to be able to carry a message of prosperity and health for the state of Arkansas. And it's received so much positive feedback. And we're able to not just, get people on board with the idea that Arkansas deserves. Arkansas can do so much better than what we're doing right now. And we're able to raise money. I mean, we've raised $800,000 now. We're breaking records for a Democrat running for federal office here in Arkansas in over a decade. We've raised money mostly from inside the state. The average dollar donation is $50, which means this is truly a grassroots movement. And we've raised money from Washington, D.C., all 50 states, and the armed forces of Europe.
Yeah, excellent. One of the things I saw on one of your posts that I thought was I thought it was interesting and funny. I laughed when I saw it. Where Ezra Klein says something about not a Democrat can't get elected, and tell me what you think about that. I thought that was sort of interesting, and I don't agree with it, but tell me.
Listen, Arkansas is one of the best states in the country. And one of the things that I like to tell people is that if you take the number of Democrats, registered Democrats, and the number of registered Republicans, they're dwarfed by the number of nonpartisan registered voters. We're an independent thinking state. I would argue we're a little stubborn.
Right.
And we are perfectly capable of making our own decision about who best represents us. And Tom Cotton is extremely unpopular in this state. Um, and the reason is because he does not do the work. And one of the things I like about Arkansas is we don't complain that the work is hard. We just do it. And we deserve a square deal for doing the work. Tom Cotton doesn't do the work. And that is why we're going to beat him.
I'm curious, when you go around, what do you hear people say about Tom Cotton?
What's interesting is that I hear a lot of really good things about his parents, but his behavior truly, contradicts his raising, obviously. He doesn't do the work. He doesn't come home. He lives in Virginia. There is proof that he is a resident of Virginia. And so when he comes to Arkansas, which is very rare and only because he has to run a re-election, people are like, please go home to Virginia. We don't want you here.
Yeah. So if you get elected, how will you maintain that accessibility?
I'm going to create the best constituent services program in the country, because I truly believe that people deserve more than phone trees. They deserve more than form letters. They deserve to speak to an actual person, and not just any person, someone who knows the state of Arkansas, someone who has worked on the ground like me. And that is my job. My job as a senator is to be the liaison between the people I represent and the federal government, and to fight every single day for them, no matter what it takes.
Excellent. I applaud you for running for sure, because we need a vibrant two-party system where we can explore ideas and debate them in an open format. I think it's better for all of us if that happens, for sure. And so it's not easy to run around and do this and raise the capital. So, so hats off to you for doing that. Hallie Shoffner, U.S. Senate candidate. It's nice to have you on.
Same. Thank you so much, Andy.